Hi folks, I'm Dr. Robin and I'm back with the next episode of K-Pop Science EDU. My original plan was to use some non-BTS content for the next lesson because it's supposed to be K-Pop Science EDU and not BTS Science EDU, but then I watched SUGA's woodworking vlog and after 7 months I finally got my gym and hoodie, so I changed my mind. So here is the clip that inspired today's lesson.
이제 다음 보여드릴 목재가 이제 이 캄포 나무예요. 냄새 한번 맡아보시겠어요?
야, 이거는
좀
그건데 피톤치드인데 완전.
그죠? 얘 같은 경우는 이제 캄포라고 해가지고 캄포 도마라고 많이 들어보셨나요?
아, 들어본 것 같아요.
네.
좀 비싼 거.
맞아요.
네.
캄포 도마가 굉장히 좀 비싸고
네.
선물용으로 굉장히 좋고
맞아요.
그러잖아요.
20만 원씩 하던데.
앞서 보여드렸던 나무들은 다 하드우드 수종이라면은
네.
얘 같은 경우는 이제 소프트우드.
근데 왜 얘가 비싼 거예요?
항균 작용이 굉장히 좋아서.
그것도 과학적인 건가요?
So much to learn in just a couple of minutes. The first thing I researched was what biologically distinguishes hardwoods from softwoods. And we're just going to have to save that for another time because there is too much other stuff to talk about. Of course, my main goal was to answer SUGA's question. When the instructor said to him that the camphor wood is naturally antibacterial, SUGA asked, has that been scientifically proven? Well, as you know, SUGA is no fool, and that is a really good question. So to start, let's quickly define what antibacterial means. Antibacterial is something that kills bacteria. Antibacterial. Please note that bacteria are different from viruses. So although we can save this discussion about the differences between bacteria and viruses for another day, let's now just be clear that something that is antibacteria is not going to kill a virus. This is why you should not take antibiotics, which are antibacterial, when you are infected by a virus, like when you have a cold, the flu, or COVID. Viruses are not bacteria. There are quite a few companies that sell camphor cutting boards and say on their website that they're naturally antibacterial. However, in general, no data are given to support that claim. Now, I did find 2 companies that went ahead and provided their own data, which is definitely a step in the right direction. Now, I'm not going to mention them by name here because I'm going to say something potentially negative about them. And I want to reiterate that I think it's great that they knew that they should provide some data. However, I just think they might need a little support to make sure that data they provide are reliable. So the one company compared cedar with camphor, and they reported that the level of bacteria on the camphor boards was lower than the level of bacteria on the cedar boards. However, they didn't provide any additional study details, so I'm not sure exactly how the study was done, so it's hard for me to judge whether or not those data are reliable. The other company, they looked at some camphor boards and said that they did not find any bacteria on the boards. Again, they didn't provide any additional details, and it doesn't look like they compared the camphor to anything non-camphor, so it's hard to know if the lack of bacteria on the camphor was something special. If you know of any other studies, please let me know because I'm really interested in this whole question now. But for now, are there studies that have shown that the camphor cutting boards are antibacterial? No. Now, some companies say that the boards are antibacterial because of the essential oils in them. So let's take a look at the oils. Now, there are quite a few studies that have looked at the compounds in the essential oils extracted from camphor trees. And it turns out that a 2022 review of the studies about camphor essential oils was written by some scientists in Korea. So this works out perfectly. The first thing to note is that among the handful of recent studies discussed in the review, and one other I added myself, the compounds in the essential oils from the tree samples vary. So check out this table in which I have captured at the top here in the purple section the compounds that were detected in each study. First off, from study to study, the oils are extracted from different parts of the tree, so it's hard to compare them. But if we look just at the 3 studies that extracted oils from leaves, you can see that the amount of each compound is highly variable. For example, the Mujawah study only examines eucalyptal because that was the most abundant compound in their sample. However, in the Chen study, eucalyptal was the second most abundant at 16.8%. And in the Pudal study of oil from leaves, eucalyptal was not detected at all. And what about whether the oils are antibacterial? The bottom of the table in the blue section describes whether or not the oils were able to kill bacteria. The 13 different strains that were evaluated across the studies are listed on the left. If the study did evaluate whether the oils killed that specific strain, there is a yes or a no. If the study did not evaluate that strain, there is an NA. As you can see, the strains tested from one study to the next were different. And also, if we again look at the 3 studies that looked at whether the oil from the leaves could kill bacteria, Chen and Mujawah say yes, and Pudal says no. Of course, we should not have expected them to have the same effects because we already know that the compounds in the oils are different from each other. So, I would say that we can conclude that the oils extracted from camphor leaves are maybe antibacterial. However, the type and level of compound in those oils are very inconsistent. And when it comes to the type of oils that might affect camphor cutting boards, I'm not so sure the oils extracted from leaves are all that relevant anyway. I think it would make more sense to look at the oils extracted from the wood, but there aren't really that many studies that have looked at the oils extracted from the wood. There was this one study mentioned in the review. I didn't find others, but please let me know if you know of others. If we look closely at the compounds in the oil extracted from the wood, the levels of many of them are quite different from the levels in the same study on leaves. And if we look at how well the oils from the wood killed bacteria, the authors reported that the oil could kill the bacteria Staphylococcus aureus, but that is it. So are there oils in the wood that could render a camphor cutting board antibacterial? I haven't seen data that convinces me that is the case. So putting all of this together as of now, to answer SUGA's question, I would say, no, I don't think it has been scientifically proven. Now, if you know more about this, please let me know. I'm really interested in learning more. I would also love it if Hive decided to send SUGA to meet with a Korean scientist who wrote this review of the studies looking at the camphor essential oils to hear what they have to say on the matter. And maybe they could plan a study in which they compare camphor cutting boards to non-camphor cutting boards. Hive is a research sponsor. Anyway, that is it for today. Thank you for joining me as I learn more about this topic. Please let me know if you have any questions or suggestions. I will see you next lesson. Until then, keep listening and keep learning. 감사합니다.